Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar session on Möbius Grading. Möbius Grading is a game changer for paper-based assessments. I'm going to give everybody just under another minute just to make sure that everyone's clocks aligned, because 101 Eastern is a little bit different for other people's based on the computer they're using maybe. So we'll just give people a little bit of time, and we'll begin at 101. Alrighty, let's do it. 101, here we go. Welcome everybody. Thanks again for joining on today's session called Möbius Grading, the game changer for grading paper-based assessments. Here's the itinerary for today's session. We're going to start with a welcome and just remind you of what the key takeaways are of today. And then I'm going to introduce our presenters. We're then going to get into the details of what is Möbius Grading. You're hearing this word, you maybe haven't had the chance to explore online, maybe what it is yet. No problem, we've got you covered. We'll give you a demo and some great background information on what Möbius Grading is all about. We're then going to take some time to have a really great conversation with our wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Ahmed Hassan. And we're going to have a great conversation about his journey and what it's been like for him to be using Möbius Grading. Then we're going to jump over and do a deeper dive again back into Möbius Grading, so you can really start to imagine how it can integrate with your workflow and take a look at some insightful analytics that are automatically generated to really let you know what you can take away from Möbius Grading. And then we'll finish with a Q&A session. So welcome. I know that everybody by now is for sure experts on how to use these Zoom webinar sessions, but I just wanted to still check in on some housekeeping for these things so we can all get the most out of this session. We love engagement in these sessions. So if you have something to add, please, by all means, toss it into the chat. We love comments and we love feedback that way. But also, if you have an actual question, please make sure you stick it in the Q&A section of your Zoom screen, not in the chat. So that way we won't miss it if we for sure see it coming in the Q&A. We'll then be sure to save the last 5 or 10 minutes of the of the session for a Q&A session. These questions can be directed at Dr. Hassan or at the digital ed team. No problem. If you're not sure who it's for, don't worry, toss it into the Q&A and we'll sort it out and we'll make sure that it gets answered. But if by chance, if we do run out of time, because we've got a lot of great stuff to cover in this session, if we do run out of time, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the webinar. And like I said, we wanted to go through the key takeaways of today. So by the end of today's session, we want to make sure that you understand the purpose of Möbius Grading. So again, you're hearing this word Möbius Grading. What does it actually mean to you? And then secondly, what does it look like? Johnny's going to give a great demo of the different interactions and the different parts of the UI on the screen, and you'll be able to walk away with this to know what it means to use Möbius Grading. We're then going to learn what it's like for a real user to use Möbius Grading, and that's again our wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Hassan. He's just like you guys. He's out there. He's in the weeds. He's working with students. He's working with other faculty. He's using it himself. So it'll be really great to hear what his experience has been so far. And at the end, we'll make sure that you know where to find more information about Möbius Grading, and we'll be sure to provide those pieces of information and outlets for you. So your presenters, again, our wonderful guest speaker, Dr. Ahmed Hassan. We appreciate him taking the time out of his busy day to spend some time with us to talk through Möbius Grading. Dr. Hassan is currently working as an instructor 2, which is the equivalent to an assistant professor teaching stream in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Carleton University in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. His teaching philosophy is built on the belief that students inherently want to learn, and an instructor's role is to remove what they define as learning hurdles. So he achieves this approach through 4 main avenues. First, by sparking student curiosity through well-defined and well-designed learning objectives and assessments. He also does it through humanizing the student-teacher interaction. He also does it through a process of continuous pedagogical improvement based on feedback. And lastly, he also does it by using technology to overcome logistical challenges. Among those technologies is the use of Möbius and today's feature of Möbius Grading. So he's currently leading a pilot at Carleton University to assess the use of Möbius Grading as part of the Future Learning Innovation Fellowship. So what better person to have on this call than Dr. Hassan to really share what his experience has been. And then there's me. I'm Chelsea Ranville. I'm a manager of product marketing here at Digital Ed, and I'm joined with my director, Johnny Zipke, who's a director of product marketing. He's a great knowledge pool. He knows everything there is to know about Möbius and Möbius Grading. So what better person that way to give a showcase of the actual tool? Let's get into it. What is Möbius Grading? So Möbius Grading is a collaborative grading tool to transform the way you grade. And it focuses on three main types of assessment. There's the bubble sheet multiple choice, there's paper-based assessment, and then there's remote offline assessment. Möbius Grading is just one of the solutions offered by Digital Ed. Möbius offers comprehensive course delivery, student practice, and automatic grading of digital assessments. And this is backed by the sophisticated math engine of Maple. So many of you on the call are probably familiar with Maple and the Maple language. The solution allows you to ask open-ended questions and algorithmic questions that are automatically graded, as well as offer experiential learning content for students to solidify their understanding of these complex math concepts, as well as other components of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, math. The Möbius MA placement test suite is shown on the right side there, and it also offers automatic grading, but it's targeted for gauging entry-level student and math foundational skills to make sure that students are enrolled in appropriate first-year math courses. And this is called MAA because it's backed by the MAA, which is the Mathematical Association of America. But when it comes to collaboratively grading paper-based assessments, this is where Möbius Grading comes in. This is the key. This is a great solution for this need in the industry. The efficiency of this tool comes from superior workflows for collaborative grading. And that means that you can grade simultaneously online with yourself and alongside your grading team. And your ability to customize how your paper-based assessment is delivered and graded are standout features of this offering for sure. It's an entirely separate tool from Möbius, and it's designed with a simple interface for grading a large number of paper-based assessments quickly and digitally. It's access to your LMS or your VLE. And for those of you who are already using Möbius, you know that Möbius, again, already has that powerful grading capability built into it. But this is where Möbius Grading comes in now, since Möbius Grading is a tool that is excellent for the paper-based aspect of grading. And like I said, there's three main types of assessments. That Möbius Grading is applicable for. So let's start with the bubble sheet assessment. So this is to handle things like in-person multiple choice exams. This is similar to that traditional Scantron that a lot of people might be familiar with, but there's some remarkable advantages like cost savings, for example. Möbius Grading, to do bubble sheet exams, you don't need specialty paper, you don't need specialty scanners, you can use whatever you have in-house. Another application of this is this in-person paper-based assessments. And we commonly see this applied to high-stakes exams. So these are in-person where students are completing their short and long answer exams handwritten by hand on a physical paper. And then there's the last scenario of remote offline assessments. So this is what we commonly see for homework assignments. So for example, a student can use an alternative tool to complete their response, like they could complete it in Excel or maybe Google Docs. And then the student would then transform this document into a PDF, or they could take a screenshot and then upload this themselves into the Möbius Grading interface so that you as the grader can grade this physical paper or this physical document digitally. There's another application of this where the student can also be at home, print off their assignment, handwrite their responses on the paper, then take a photo of it, even with their phone, and then upload that into Möbius Grading. And again, and now you've got this outlet to do digital grading of a physical piece of paper. So a really cool workflow that we love to talk about. The design of Möbius Grading is powered by Edufide, and this Edufide is a Digital Ed technology partner. This is a really strong partnership between Digital Ed and Edufide, and both companies are focused on shaping the world through digital learning. Möbius Grading was developed with the support of instructors from the University of Alberta in Canada, and this is an institution with over 39,000 students. The solution was trialed campus-wide across a range of departments and disciplines. The assessments were successfully trialed in class sizes of up to 1,500 students, with grading teams of up to 10 to 12 graders. So there was huge grading collaboration going on. So with that, you can see that there's no scenario that's too big or too small for Möbius Grading. I'm going to pass it over to Johnny now, and he's going to walk us through the process of how you use Möbius Grading, and then we'll jump into actually see what it looks like.
Thanks, Chelsea. So yeah, as Chelsea mentioned, I just want to walk you through the workflow for how you would actually use Möbius Grading. And it's a 4-step process. And the first step is to create your Möbius grading assessment. And as Chelsea mentioned, whether it's the flavor of bubble sheets, digital or paper-based offline, you have to create it within the platform. It's a very simple process. Once you create them, you then distribute them. You generate the exam booklets and you provide them to students in person if you're doing something offline with bubble sheets, or if it's digital, students will simply just access the Möbius grading assessment through their existing learning management system. Now, once it's distributed to students, the work from them has to be uploaded to Möbius Grading. And it's done in two ways. If you provide some type of offline assessment through Möbius Grading, like an exam or maybe some bubble sheets, those would simply be scanned by the school faculty or your other team members and uploaded to the platform in a PDF or image file. Or for students, they would just upload it themselves using their device. So whether they have a smartphone, iPhone, Android, or computer, a laptop, they can upload their own responses to questions themselves into Möbius Grading. Then, of course, the fourth part is you have to grade. So with that in mind, what does this mean? So you work with your grading team to collaboratively and, more importantly, consistently grade student submissions using digital annotations. And to really provide you with an opportunity to see that in action, I'm going to actually share my screen now and show you the interface live in this webinar. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here. And for the purpose of our demo, I'm going to use Blackboard Ultra, the learning management system, to access Möbius Grading. Möbius Grading is available through any learning management system that you have access to, whether it's Moodle or Brightspace or Canvas or Blackboard, like you see on my screen here. Möbius Grading is available. So for that, I'm going to go into my class for homework delivery on my screen. And what loads here is I call it the landing page of Möbius Grading. Here it's called the dashboard, but it's basically where you land when you go into the platform as a grader. And I'm going to go right into the marking screen or the feedback delivery screen here to show you how this workflow is available on the platform. So right here, there's a few different areas I want to focus on. The first I'll talk about is the right-hand side of your screen. This is what I would call the area where you navigate through or see student information or scores related to exams or submitted assessments. By default, you can see I have numbers here for students. So it is anonymous. You don't know their names by default. And within each student, you can see as I click through, I'll see the questions that they've submitted and the score, if it's already there, and given to them for their exam or assessment. Now, there are a few things you can do here for filtering and searching. For example, you can show the students' names to remove the anonymous part of the platform, just so you are aware of who you are grading if you want to, but by default, it's turned off. You can also search by the grader or the student name, or even what's been tagged or unmarked for future references. Now, in the main screen, this is truly where you provide feedback to the student submission. So for this part of the demo, I'm going to focus on student one, question one. And I want to first talk about what's on the right-hand side here. It's called the quick score menu. You see here, it iterates by integer values from +5 to -5. And in case you're wondering, you can change the range and the values here, but this is the default of +5 to -5. And one way you can provide scores in Möbius Grading is using this, again, the quick score functionality. So what this means is, let's say you want to give just really quickly scores for what they did on the screen. I'll start with a +1 and I'll just put it on the screen here. Maybe I'll change it to green and say, okay, +1 right here. You got 1 point there, 1 point here. This is worth 3 points in the bottom left because of the graph you drew. And if you notice, as I'm clicking here, the score on the left-hand side is iterating or increasing up. So I can continue to provide feedback here with the scores. And as I'm done right now, notice on my screen, if I'm done here, they now have a score of 9 out of 10. So that was a very quick way to provide feedback. Now, alternatively, I can go the opposite way. So instead of going up with providing values and scores to students, I can go, I can start with a perfect score, as you see on my screen here, and now go down. And maybe I want to change this to red, for example, where they made a mistake. So I can, okay, you made a mistake here. So now you're going down to 8, take away 2 here, and now you're going down to 6, take away another 2 here. Now your score is 4 to 10. So this quick score, I often recommend, works in 2 ways. You either start from 0 and give them credit, or you start with the perfect score and you remove credit. And what you're doing is very quickly providing, scores to students. I find this is very useful for more weekly homework, low stakes, quizzes or assessments that you're giving to students, for that type of purpose, for maybe it's weekly homework or things of that nature. So that's the one way you can provide scores to students. Now, the other way, though, if you want to provide a little bit more information, a little bit more customized feedback, or even more reasons why they got things, let's talk about this top bar, this annotation bar, if you would. So there's a few different tools here. This first one is the pencil icon. What this means is you can easily circle things or drop, or you basically just mark up the screen with whatever you want. It's a free form tool to kind of do that. And of course, as you saw, this color indicator you can choose for any tool in the top. So that was for the pencil. Maybe for highlight, I want to use yellow. So this is a highlighter, the second tool there, and I can select or focus in on certain things. I can change it to different colors for different purposes, of course, but that's the highlight feature. Now, jumping forward to the check mark, obviously this is where we give to indicate to students where they did well and what was correct. This isn't giving a score, by the way, to the students. You're just providing indicators where they did well. And likewise with the X value, again, you're not taking away scores. You're just indicating on the screen and marking up their response where they did well and did well themselves. A few of the tools here, just to mention that I won't showcase, we do have this ability to rotate and flip if students, maybe it was scanned in the wrong way. Maybe they, took it horizontally with their phone when they upload their responses. You can always flip and rotate images if you have to. And you've been seeing this whole time. You can also delete things on the screen. We've also just released this feature that allows you to, as part of providing feedback, you can, record your audio or your screen, and that will be feedback they see on their end as well. Now, with that in mind, this comment one that I skipped is very important to talk about. This is a better way to, in my opinion, provide a little bit more description as to what they did and what they didn't do well. So as an example, my comment could be something simple like, great work on, applying the theorem here. And I can even, save this for future use and provide a point value. Let's say I make it worth 3 marks and click add comments. Now, what I have on my screen, you'll notice that my mouse now is this, as I move it in the middle of your screen there, it looks like the comment icon from the top. And when I click there, notice that I now have this comment on the screen that I can drag and drop and move aside. More importantly, in the top left is the point value associated with it. So comments that you create, they can or cannot have point values associated with them. It's up to you to choose if you want to make them worth something or just to mark up the screen. And if you save it for future use, it'll appear on the left-hand side in this comment library. And what's great is that, you can see I have a few different comments here. These at the top, like I mentioned, if I add them to my screen, they're not worth points, but they are providing feedback to the student. Whereas if I want to use this great work, keep it up, again, it's a great one. And 2 points plus 3 points, the score on the top left changes to 5. So that's the comment library on the left-hand side. What's really cool about this is as a teacher or grader, if you would, you can set this up ahead of time. So if you have multiple people grading, this comment library will already be visible for them when they come into the grading screen. So it saves them having to create comments themselves, having to assign point values themselves. It's all here already done for them. More importantly, as well, as when you go from student to student and grading question 1, if I go to student 2 now to grade the same question, my comments are saved. So students will see the same comments as each other. The point values are the same as each other. If perhaps maybe I notice, oh man, I made a typo in this comment and I want to edit it and click update comment, or maybe I just want to change how much it's worth. When you edit it on one student, any other student who has that comment already applied to them will be updated in real time. So the logistics of having to keep track of what you gave student A, B, C, and D versus, as you go through F, G, H, and I, and so forth, is taken care of for you by the platform automatically. And more importantly, if you have multiple people grading, consistency is kept in place as well, so that even though they're different people with their own minds looking at the same, exams and everything like that, the feedback is the same, the point values are the same, and it just makes for a more fair and equitable process when it comes to grading student assessments, especially when it comes to high stakes exams and midterms. So with that in mind, I'm going to shift this back to Chelsea to speak with Dr. Hessen about his experience with Möbius Grading.
Wonderful, thank you. Let me figure out my screen share again. You know how it goes. There we go. Nice. Yes, Dr. Hessen, got a bunch of great questions for you. Thanks again for joining. We know you're busy. You're in the middle of exams right now, so thanks for setting this time aside. I think a lot of people will have will have this question on their mind on this webinar is just trying to understand what's before using Möbius grading. What was it like to do your in-person grading for paper-based assessments?
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you for having me. I would say the thing that really encouraged me towards searching for a tool similar to Möbius grading is the logistical issues with the large classrooms. So I teach first-year engineering courses, among other things, but I think that is the one that was worth the most, like giving the most headache. When I have classes with the last semester, for example, or in the fall, I had my section was 260, and then there was 2 other sections. So we're talking about 700 plus students. The grading team, which was myself, 2 other instructors, and maybe about 8 TAs, in order for us to get the exams, the paper exams in one location, book that location for a considerable period of time, and the TAs to come in person to grade it, because we also don't want the TAs to take the exams with them home, just for safety. And then on top of that, just keeping track of, okay, how many exams were graded by this specific date, who is behind, who started, who didn't start, who graded which questions when we have hundreds of exams, organizing everything alphabetically in order for us to compile the grades and input it, adding up the grades as well. Let's say adding up the grades for a specific question and then adding up the grades for every question so that we get a grade for the exam. So those were all things that were logistical nightmares for really large classes. And that's really what pushed me towards looking for tools to kind of streamline the process and make it more efficient. And that's when I started kind of looking into Möbius grading, and then starting the pilot that we have at Carton right now. So that kind of answers the question as to what really pushed me towards that.
Absolutely, yeah. And like it sounds like a lot of manual work that I feel like a lot of people on this call are able to relate to. They say, yeah, you know, that part is a logistical headache, or yeah, that does take a lot of extra time. So so thanks. That's important to hear and understand that background on your process. I'm curious about what you had mentioned that, you know, you gave some background on the traditional methods and that you were looking for other tools. What is it that about Möbius grading that made it stand out to you to want to take on this pilot?
I think the most important thing was just taking care of the logistical stuff. Because let's say right now I have a number of TAs who are grading. I don't, especially if it's like a midterm or something, it's in the middle of the term. The TAs are usually graduate students, so they have their own schedule. I have my own schedule. So figuring out a schedule that works so that everybody would be available, but at the same time returning the grades for students at a reasonable time. I felt like it wouldn't be feasible, especially with such a large number of exams, except if we are able to find a way for the TAs to grade at flexible hours, whatever hours work for them. Now, if they want to grade it during the day, they don't want to grade during the nighttime because they want that as personal time, that's perfectly fine. But having a paper-based exam that has to be graded on paper restricts, because there was always going to be a conflict. So let's say what I like to do, and I know my colleagues like to do this as well, is that we get one question to be graded by TA1, the second question to be graded by TA2, third question to be graded by TA3, and so on. If let's say TA1 and 2 want to grade at the same time, they're not able to. Or at least you have to divide them into different piles, and there's always a problem with, well, there's this pile that was left out and we didn't grade it yet, and nobody knows about it until the very end. With using something that is yes, it's still on paper, but it is graded online. You can do that. You can have multiple TAs grading the same exam paper at the same time, and that doesn't create any conflicts there. The other thing that was really appealing, and I think maybe that this is, I need to really ensure, because this was definitely a concern for me when I first started using Möbius grading, was, okay, how different will this be from a regular exam? And this is the question also when I talk to my colleagues, they ask me the same question, and the process is actually not different at all. The way you would format the questions is exactly the same as you would format it in a regular paper-based exam. You would just create a PDF similar to the PDF that you would create in a paper-based exam, and you would just need to drag and drop that file into the system, and then it creates or generates the exams for you. So you don't really have to program the questions into Möbius grading. You don't have to create the exam in any new way. So there isn't really a lot of extra work to adopt this. In terms of the implementation and the students writing the exam, the process is still going to be the same. You're still going to send the file to printing, and then it's going to be printed and either given to you or you will find it in the exam room, depending on what your institution does. And then the students write on paper, just like before. The only difference I would say is just that the exams would have to be scanned later on. But I mean, I can answer questions about that process as well. But that process of scanning the exam papers takes, if not the same time, I think even less time than ordering through exam papers and compiling grades and so on. So yes, there is some time investment in scanning the exam papers, but you can compare it to looking for students, ordering the exam papers, compiling them into an Excel sheet. If it's a midterm and you need to hand it back, then also you need to kind of figure out the logistics of, okay, how are we going to return it back to students with such a large number? Do we have to split it by sections? If we want to return it back in the lecture, then it's going to be like a free-for-all. Everybody can see everybody else's grades. So that's also not acceptable and will take up from the lecture time. So yes, there is downtime for scanning, but I think it is more than made up for with the saving in time and other things.
Wonderful. That's great to hear. And I wanted to add, I like how you spoke about, your CAs or your grading team, they have the freedom, right? If they have an internet connection, yeah, they'll have access. They can do their grading from anywhere, right? With that internet connection. So that's really cool. Instead of being locked down to tracking physical papers around. That's great news. And just maybe also kind of connected to that question and just talking about it fitting into your current workflow and having that easy transition. So Möbius grading integrates with your learning management system or the VLE, which is the virtual learning environment. Curious about your experience there and how that's fit into your workflow and how what your experience is on that front.
Yeah, so I also spent some time looking into this at the beginning. So Möbius grading has an LTI integration, which means that once the setup is figured out with the IT team for whichever institution, so for example, the IT team at Carleton, they integrated it into the learning management system, which we use D2L or Brightspace. But I know it's also used in Moodle, and you've just showed that it's used in Brightspace. I think it's also used with Canvas in some institutions. But basically, once it's integrated, what you would need to do is you would need to just create the link in the in your Brightspace page. And once you click on the link, it automatically jumps you into the system where you can create the exam and so on. And it will automatically kind of what's it called? Just pull out the student numbers, student names from the Brightspace page or the learning management system into Möbius grading. And once the students kind of fill in their information on the front page, it will match their names and student IDs with the names and the student IDs that are in the system that it pulls from the learning management system.
Wonderful. Yeah. So
And then once you're
seeing-
done, of course, you can also push the grades back to the learning management system as well.
Wonderful. Right, great. And I think Johnny has some plans to kind of get into a little bit of that process too. So thanks for that preface on that. And I think another question that, like, in general, that the audience may be having is just kind of trying to understand what it means to have an in-person exam, right? That students are doing by paper. It gets scanned in. Okay, now the grading team has access to a digital copy. And so I think people might be wondering, okay, well, how does the student actually, right? If they're not getting their physical paper back, how are they viewing that feedback? And I'm sure you have experience with that, Dr. Hassan, but yeah, just that it's a cool workflow to think about, that the students, they'll be able to access their graded feedback of their physical paper digitally using their LMS or their VLE. It's the same link that the instructor uses to create their exam.
It's the same link. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's just it's a seamless experience for students and faculty alike. So that's definitely a benefit there. Segueing into students, I'm curious about from your side of things, what would you say that some of the benefits are for your students when your team is using Möbius Grading to perform the grading of their paper-based assessments?
Well, I think definitely for me, I found that the grading process is much quicker. So the students get the feedback faster. So that's one big advantage. Another advantage is the consistency, because I've had issues also in the past where I give all the TAs the same set of instructions, same marking scheme, but then some of them follow it and some of them do not. And that will always happen. So by creating the marking scheme in there, and I tell them, listen, just use this marking scheme to grade things. What Möbius Grading also has is it has a feature that you can remove if you want, but you can. I like to keep it on, where the students can see who graded the question. So if you want to get the students to first talk to the TA before they get back to you, they can do that. They don't have to come and ask you, oh, who graded this question, and then they can contact them. They can already see it automatically there. So that's number one. Because the marking scheme has comments, you don't necessarily have to just put like -2, -3. The TAs can choose from the marking scheme, and it will already have a pre-made comment, so they know exactly why they lost 2 marks or 1 mark and so on. If they want to appeal the grade later, or if I find that the TA is not doing their job, I can see exactly who graded the question without seeing the physical copy or anything like that. Another advantage for students is because I set up the marking scheme in Möbius Grading, whenever I use a comment multiple times, I will know that, okay, this is something that maybe I didn't teach that well, or students maybe didn't receive that well, and I can go over it again. So this semester, I had this issue with the midterm, where I had in a class of 160, I had maybe 90 people make the same mistake. So I made sure that I talk about it in class, like, okay, most of you made this mistake, you missed this part. So that's also very good formative feedback for students. That's based on the assessment that was given, and formative assessment for me as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And one of the pillars that you base your work on is having, constant iteration and improvements to your pedagogy, and that sounds like it's a good way to do that, because you have a more one-to-one ratio of seeing where those changes need to happen because of the comments being used and the frequency of them. That's wonderful to hear. Great. Another side of this tool, like we said, is the bubble sheet experience, and we'd like to compare it to Scantron, and there's definitely a lot of benefits of Möbius Grading over Scantron. So I'd love to hear your 2 cents on the comparison between the two.
Okay, yeah. So I don't usually use Scantrons. Like, let's say last year, I wouldn't have used Scantron at all. But because I'm heading the pilot for Carleton, I was asked by my basically teaching and learning services team to also use it for one of the courses that does traditionally have Scantron-like exams, or MCQ exam, multiple choice exams. And I've met with basically the person who leads the MCQ or Scantron process at Carleton. And she came in and she saw the process, and she was also telling me about the differences. I think the big difference from the student's perspective is, in my opinion, the paper for the MCQ is a lot simpler. I think the paper for the MCQ for Scantron, to me, it looks intimidating for some students. It's double-sided, it's colored, there is a lot of things to bubble in, including like the date, the time, and so on. So that's just from the student's perspective. From the grader's perspective, or from the instructor's perspective, one thing that I found out from our MCQ expert, and I mean, I'm not the expert, but this is what I was told, is that Scantron has some limitations in terms of what you can fill in the answers with. So you have to answer the, sorry, one second.
You're very popular.
You have to answer the MCQ with a pencil on a Scantron, but on Möbius Grading, I have used it already in, I don't know, nobody calls me, by the way, this is the first time.
Figures.
But on Möbius Grading, you can use, and I've tested this out, blue pen, black pen, pencil. I've even done something crazy and used highlighter just to see if it will pick up on it. And it did pick up on, yes, it didn't pick up on it 100%, but it was like 90-something%, even with a yellow highlighter, which is very hard to pick on. This is something that's not possible on Scantron at all. The other thing that's a big advantage for using Möbius Grading over Scantron, and I heard this from our Scantron expert as well, is that if a student fills out their student ID wrong on the first page, in Scantron, you have to go and search for the physical copy and enter it manually. In Möbius Grading, it actually shows it to you on a screen, and it shows you the first page. So you can very easily just read the name and the student number and just add that to the system, and it will automatically assign it to that student. So you don't have to find the physical copy to do any of that stuff. And you'll also be able to see even the filled in portion of the MCQ exam, if ever you want to like cross-check it or anything. But it's been very, very accurate. I don't think I've seen or noticed, or I haven't had any reports of anything that was misgraded. It picks up on filled in answers very, very nicely. Even if students, let's say, write something, erase it, and then write something else, let's say they choose B, erase it, and choose C, it's able to tell the contrast, and it will pick the more accurate or the more filled in one in that case.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's cool. And yeah, not that anyone's encouraging students to use a highlighter on their bubble sheet, but it just it just speaks to the fact that of its sensitivity and its intelligence to detect student answers. So that's great to hear. I've got one more burning question for you, Dr. Hassan, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Johnny, and he's going to touch on some things. And he's also going to touch on something that I'm about to ask you about here. And I know we've got some great questions coming in from the audience for the Q&A, and some of them have touched on this. We're curious about what type of insights you're able to get from the analytics that Möbius Grading provides, and maybe how that also compares to like when the traditional way of not using Möbius Grading and using just a straight up paper-based assessment. Like, how would you get analytics then versus how do you access analytics now?
So are you asking about like paper-based written exams or multiple choice questions?
I would say both. We're curious about your experience on both sides of those analytics.
Yeah, on paper-based exams, now instead of having just the statistics for the entire exam, I have statistics by question. So I can see question 1, for example, had a 78% average. Question 2 had a 70% average. Unless you tally up every single question in an exam, you usually don't have that kind of statistic. You can do it, but it's going to be more time consuming. Here, you don't have that problem because you grade by question, and you can just tally up the questions by the grades by question. Also, the comments thing, I think I find it very useful. That's something definitely that's not possible in on-paper exam. I would usually just ask the TAs, what was the most common mistake or something, and they would just by sense tell me what was the most common mistake. But now I actually have statistics to back that up with using the comments. In terms of MCQs, all the statistics that you would need is probably there. You can have statistics by question. You can have statistics for the exam as a whole. And in that sense, you can also remove troublesome questions from an MCQ exam if you want to. Another cool thing is that you can change the marking scheme even for MCQ exams, even after the exam is written. So you can very easily assign a grade of 0 to a question that you want to eliminate. And that would take care of that. And you just click grade all, and then it will just regrade everything with removing that question. So you just give everybody a 0 for that, and then you take the exam out of 99, for example.
Just with just with the click of a button, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's relatively easy. And I think for people who have a lot of worries about like putting in the wrong marking scheme and stuff, you can always also change it. Like, let's say you put in A by mistake for question 3, and then later you see, oh, everybody got this wrong, and then you check and you're like, oh, actually the answer for this was B. You can always just change it from A to B, still with the grade of 1, and it will change it for everybody.
Great. Yeah. So the analytics kind of give you a heads up about a flag to you about maybe something that needs to be changed with the answer code, for example, answer key.
Yeah.
Very cool. That was awesome. Thank you, Dr. Hassan. We've got a bunch of questions in the Q&A. I see them coming in. So thanks everybody for your participation that way. Before we get into it though, I am going to pass it back over to Johnny. And we're going to get into just a quick deeper dive into Möbius Grading. We're going to speak to some of the things that Dr. Hassan got into, like the analytics and kind of the test setup things. And some of this might actually answer some of the questions in the Q&A. So let's get at it. Johnny, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you, Chelsea. So yeah, thank you very much for all that conversation back and forth. Definitely answer some questions in the Q&A. I'm just going to take, a few minutes to explain some more of the details related to analytics and how you even review multiple choice questions and how you set those grades. So, one thing that you might be wondering is, and I saw this few, is when you generate these exams in Möbius Grading, how do you, provide them to students, and then vice versa? How does the system then know who they are, right? Well, just to give you a little sample here, I have something already generated on my machine here. So this is a, let me just open up the right file here. So here I have on my screen, this is a completed exam from Möbius Grading. So what I mean is, this is an exam booklet generated from Möbius Grading. This page is given to all students, and this front matter page, as you can tell, asks for their first name, last name, student ID, and they fill in their student ID with this bubble sheet. And with each page of an exam booklet, there is a QR code. And every exam booklet has the same, like when you give an exam booklet to a student, their pages have the same QR code as for every single page. Now, if me and Chelsea or me and Dr. Hassan have exam booklets, we have distinct barcodes, but every exam book that you give to a student, their booklet has the same barcode on every page, so that when you scan this back into Möbius Grading, it automatically reads in their student ID. It links that to the barcode on the first page, and then every other barcoded page gets mapped to this student. And the reason for that is maybe the papers get dropped. Maybe when you put them into your scanner, they go in different orders by accident and so forth. So the purpose is that no matter how you scan them into the platform, and more importantly is, I saw someone ask, do I have to buy some specialty scanner from Digital Ed? And no, any scanner you have on campus will work. Of course, we have suggestions in our documentation if you need some ideas, but any scanner works, but it'll automatically match things up for you. And we even have a great thing in place here. Maybe the students, they didn't fill in the bubble sheet, they were in such a rush to start the exam, they skipped through it. As a failsafe, it'll then, instead, if that fails, it'll read their text. That's why it says all caps of student ID. I'll read that and match it that way as a second attempt to match the student properly. Now, Dr. Hassan mentioned if there is still an unmatch, maybe they completely left this blank, within Möbius Grading, it'll tell you, oh, this is an exam booklet that wasn't matched. Please match it yourself manually. So rather than having to flip through the papers and find the student and everything like that, it's all on the platform. It's all digital. The manual process of having to find a student, even though it failed twice, is all done on the platform and very easy to see. So with that in mind, I do want to go back to my browser just to show you this screen right here. This is a summary of a test that had a bubble sheet attached to it. So, during the conversation, discussion with analytics came up. So for a question that's not, a bubble sheet, you do have this very cool graph that kind of tells you, okay, based off all the scores given for this question to your students, here's the mean, here's the distribution and how frequent they were given to students. With multiple choice question, it does go a little bit further than that. So you have, of course, this histogram that says, okay, here's the score for this multiple choice bubble sheet area, but view item analysis then breaks it down even further. By multiple choice question, you get a nice difficulty and discrimination analysis plus a distribution of responses. So it tells you for each question, what the upper quartile and lower quartile were, and the distribution from A, B, C, D, and E for each question. So it's very cool. It gives you some insight into what students were clicking, what they weren't clicking. You can, of course, at the bottom, like you see here, download these scores and download the raw data if you want to explore it further yourself. And of course, when you go into the marking screen, as you saw before, it's the same screen, nothing has changed here, but that particular question that had the bubble sheets, you can even dive in to see exactly what the students shaded in and what they didn't shade in. So for example, going to Q3 here for my students, I'll see their bubble sheet. And for each line that they filled in, you see which ones they got right and wrong. Möbius grading automatically puts these, red squares and scores associated with them for each one for you automatically. And if there is a situation where, maybe they filled in multiple bubbles by accident, or they didn't shade it all the way, it'll be highlighted in purple to notify you, and there'll be an M here next to the number to tell you, okay, as a heads up, this one wasn't, graded appropriately. Maybe you want to adjust the grade yourself manually just to make sure, or to avoid student questions later. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass things back to Chelsea to handle some of the Q&A or some of the questions that came through over the last 45 minutes.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Johnny. Yes, thank you for this. Yes, we're going to transition. We've got just under 15 minutes left here. We've got a lot of great questions that have come in, both for Dr. Hassan as well as Johnny and myself on the digital ed side. So let me start with this one. Can a 0 mark be added to the default marks range? And Dr. Hassan, I'm wondering about your experience there, if you've done something like that, or what your experience is on the grading side there.
Yes, I did it just yesterday. So right
Amazing.
now, I had an exam yesterday, started grading it yesterday. My TAs are grading right now during this meeting. So I did use it yesterday. Yes, you can add a comment with 0 marks.
Very cool. And as you said too, even with the multiple choice, you can edit that answer key at any time and choose to create a zero mark for a question there. Great. Another question more about maybe on the rubric side, and instead of adding those customizable comments and working with the rubric instead, or a rubric style of grading. This person is asking, can you set up rubrics that collaborators can use as a guide as opposed to inserting individual comments? Johnny, maybe I'll pass that over to you for that one.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, Chelsea, or you can insert individual comments at any point in the grading cycle. Ahead of time, though, which we often see, is you want to set up what you consider to be a rubric, or I called it during the demo a comment library, if you would. And that's kind of the standard then for graders. And what's even more important to mention is that for your graders, you can even remove permissions. So what I mean is you can even tell your graders, okay, you can only use the comments and grades I've already provided for you in the library. You can't create your own. It's, you've locked down that permission. Maybe it's a really high stakes exam that you want them to be, more rigid with, okay, only use these 10 comments and these scores. That can be a permission that you apply to your graders. Maybe it's a low stakes exam though, or low stakes assignment. In that case, you can give them the creative freedom to make their own comments and scores themselves. It's up to you as to how much permission you want to give your graders, and also, what you want to set ahead of time. Hopefully that answered the question, Chelsea.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. If it didn't, please phrase your question a different way in the Q&A by all means. Here's another question, and I think the rule is if one person asks a question, chances are other people have the same question. So I think this is something that just because we don't have the physical process in front of us to do it, so it's a question that is bound to come up. Just a reiteration of how are exams uploaded to Möbius Grading, and do students upload their own exams? So I can maybe answer this one actually. And so we've got kind of two main branches. The first branch is if it's in person. So if it's that bubble sheet multiple choice, or if it's that students coming to an exam hall and completing their assessments, the papers would get collected at the end of the exam as usual. And then the instructors or the faculty, whoever's handling that side of the logistics, is the one doing the scanning. It gets scanned into the LMS and the grading can happen. There's another form of assessment, which is generally a homework assignment. It can be used for a more high stakes assessment, but again, more commonly we hear it for homework assignments, where the assignment is accessed using an LTI link from the LMS or the VLE. The student clicks on that link, accesses their assignment, so they can then maybe print off their assignment at their home or on campus, work through their assignment, and then upload it themselves into the Möbius Grading interface. There's going to be options where the students can click and drag files and upload the copy of their assignment. And then that is automatically associated with their account in their LMS or VLE. And then the same process will then happen where the grading team then has access to the digital copy. So if it's that in-person exam, it's the faculty who's doing the uploading. If it's a remote exam or assignment, like a homework assignment, it's going to be the student uploading it themselves using the Möbius Grading interface. Yeah, Dr. Hassan, I think you've got something to add. Please do.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's clear. It doesn't have to be the professor because it's the faculty. So it could be the TA, it could be a department admin. It doesn't have to be the professor. You can give this access to somebody else. It doesn't have to be the professor who uploads the scans and stuff.
Wonderful. Yes, and I didn't mean to use a blanket statement there. Yes, thank you for being specific in that. I appreciate that. There's another great question here. And I think this is directed for Dr. Hassan as well. When it comes to handling grade appeals, how is that different now in using Möbius Grading versus your traditional methods?
Yeah, because grade appeals, usually you would want to, I mean, it depends on the professors and their level of comfort. Some professors would say just take a scan or a picture of it and then send it to the TA. There's always a question, okay, so how do the students know which TA graded which question? Sometimes we tell the TAs to write their initials, but that would also again require you to inform the students of, okay, what are the initials for each TA? Because the TAs don't want to write their name on every single exam that they grade, right? So by making it possible for students to know exactly who graded which question, they can contact them directly. They don't have to ask me first who to contact for which question. That's number one. Number two is that even when I need to intervene, I don't need to ask the TA what they did, because I can see exactly what the comments that they used are and compare it to the marking scheme. And I will see whether the TA actually followed the marking scheme or not. I don't have to cross-match with a physical copy of a marking scheme or anything like that. And another, I mean, it's easily overlooked, but sometimes when we return exams or midterms to students, some students would change the physical copy, right? Like they can erase, if they wrote in a pencil, they can erase it, write something else. They can add something that wasn't there before. And they can say, well, I had it all along, you just didn't see it. By having the physical copy in the system, this is not possible anymore. So this is also another thing for grade appeals. There is also something, I think it's related to grade appeals, but also grading, something that I didn't think about at the beginning, but then when I talked to my colleagues, they appreciated this a lot. Now you can do this, you don't have to be on campus. So especially right now, like let's say I'm teaching in the summer, when the grades are out, maybe I'll be on vacation. I don't have to be here, or I don't have to take the exams with me, and I don't need to ask the department admin to scan it and send it to me to have a look at it or anything like that. I can now do that grading from anywhere. I can do the grade appeal from anywhere. I'm not restricted geographically to a certain location to do these appeals.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's great that, yeah, it can accommodate where you are in your day. Thanks for that. Another question here, and maybe this one's for Johnny. Someone's asking about what exactly can I put in my feedback? So if I'm creating a comment, what kind of feedback can go in there?
Yeah, it's a good question. As you saw during my demo, the basic obvious answers, you can of course include text, but we do support as well images you upload, links to other websites or programs, LaTeX and math type we support as well. And what I didn't get to sure, but you can also upload a video screen share or recording of your screen, and even record your voice. That's something we just released a few weeks ago. So all those things are possible to provide feedback to a student, and they can review that then on demand themselves when they review their feedback.
Very cool. Great. Another question, a great one that came in. With Scantron, you can only have one version of your test. And A is always the answer to question 1. Is this also a limitation of bubble sheets here? And I know just from conversations that I've had with the CEO of Edufide, who supports the development of Möbius Grading. This is a feature that's coming out near the end of the summer, where you are able to have multiple versions of an assessment. So at this time, no, but we don't like saying no because we know that it's coming in the future. So hang in there, and that type of availability is absolutely coming. Dr. Hassan, please, yes.
I think there is a way to do it, actually.
Okay.
You can create in the same course page, you can create 2 exams, exam A and exam B, and then you would print out 2 sets of bubble sheets. And then when you scan, you just take all of the scanned files, add them to both of the exams. And if the student wrote exam A, it will only be recognized in exam A. If the student wrote exam B, it will only be recognized in exam B. And then each of them will be graded based on a different rubric. So it does require like an extra step, but I think it's still possible with the tools that are there now.
Amazing. And this is why we have you on the call, right? You've got that in the weeds experience, that real life experience out in the wild. So that's wonderful insights. Thank you. We've got just a few minutes left here. The questions keep coming in, so thanks everyone for your participation. Here's another question that's actually excellent in terms of the student experience, and the person is asking about what components of the grades and feedback are synchronized to the LMS or the VLE. So yeah, just maybe speaking to like the level of control that you have about the visibility of what the student has, or the student's visibility into the feedback. Dr. Hassan, why don't do you have some thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, if the question is as you understand it, because I'm not sure if that I didn't understand the question, but if that's what you mean, what can the students see? You can allow students to see the comments. You can allow them to see the grades. You can withhold the grades, or you can withhold the comments. I believe, but don't quote me on this, I don't want to say something I'm not sure of because I haven't used it before, but I believe you're also able to let the students know what the average on a question is. But again, don't quote me on this. Maybe this is not possible. I haven't tried it, but I do think I saw it in the settings in like allowing it to be visible or not.
Wonderful. Johnny, do you have anything, any of your insights?
Yeah, I think even to answer the question, what gets put in the VLE natively is the score from the test. So when you push the scores from Möbius Grading to your VLE or learning management system, the score appears in the grade book of the learning management system, directly. Now, students, of course, can then click the link to go directly to Möbius Grading to see the detailed feedback. So hopefully I answered the question even more, is that, what gets pushed to the VLE directly or the LMS is just the score. But when they want that additional feedback and to see all the comments and all that stuff that we showed you today, that's available when they click on the link to Möbius Grading to see that. And yeah, I think Dr. Hassan, you're right. It's a setting you can turn on for the assignment that they can then see the mean, I'm getting the right word, or median of the score. But yeah, it's a setting that you can enable for the homework or the exam.
Great. Thanks to both. We've got time. Let's do one more question here. And apologies for those of you, again, thanks for your participation. Apologies we didn't get to all of them, but we will definitely follow up with you after the session to answer any outstanding questions. But one last question here is about just insights. This is more on the analytics side again. Insights into tracking the marking time of the TAs or whoever's supporting in the grading. Dr. Hassan, I see you nodding. Yes. I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, because this was one of the things I also was interested in. It does allow you to see how much time on average was spent per question by each TA, not just by graders in general, by each TA, so that if someone is just scrolling through the questions quickly, you'll be able to tell. And if a question, if it ever comes out to a dispute about the amount of time that the TA graded when it comes time for the pay or disputing the amount of hours, you can always check that. So that is also a feature that's possible. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, thanks everyone. Again, thanks for the great questions. Dr. Hassan, thank you so much for your insights here and your great knowledge. I learned a lot from you on this call as well, so thank you for that. We have some resources here. You can check out more about Digital Ed at digitaled.com. You can also learn more about Möbius grading specifically at digital.com/Möbius-grading. If you have some specific questions or you're interested in pricing, things like that, please connect with us. Reach out to marketing@digital.com. And like I said, for those of you whose questions we didn't get to, we will definitely follow up with you. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks, Johnny. Thanks, Dr. Hassan. And thanks to everyone for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.